help us cross the bridge when it comes to. I'm not sure if you were here when I was saying. Do you agree that anything that has parts is generated?
Anything that has parts is generated. So, okay. I mean, I'm just trying to think. Okay, you can look at that in terms of, say, say obviously a planet is composed of multiple parts, and that's originated from gravity. So that gravity would have caused bits to come together. You can look at an animal or a plant and say how that's created and moved up from, say, a seed or a single cell. So I can see that concept. I'm not sure whether I would use the
Yeah.
word
How
generated, as
about
that
this
would be
one? How
quite
about if I
unique.
say anything that has physical parts? Yeah. Anything that has physical parts is dependent upon those physical parts in order to exist.
Anything that exists of something needs that something to exist. Yes.
Yeah, so anything that exists from physical parts requires those physical parts in order to exist.
Yes. I mean, could you clarify the physical parts bit, please?
Yeah, so physical parts, I mean that it's conceivable that they can be taken away from it or reassembled in it. So it's something, it can be rearranged within it or can be taken from it. So for example, like me as an individual, right? You can take my arms away from me and my legs and so on. So in
Yeah,
order
I
for
see
me
that.
to be me as a
Okay.
physical composite, I'm a composite of my parts.
There is, yeah. So it's composite, and it depends on the actual entity. So if we're talking a mountain, you could rearrange the rocks, and it's still a mountain. If we're talking living organisms, you can't rearrange because then it will stop ceasing. It will stop to exist. Yeah.
Right. So we agree. That's fine. So the universe is made up of physical parts.
Yes, the universe is made of multiple parts. Yes.
Therefore, the universe depends on those physical parts in order to exist.
No, because you're looking at something different, because the universe's parts could be rearranged in a completely different manner and it would still be the universe. In the same
Yeah.
way that if you took a mountain and rearranged the rocks, you still have that mountain. But if you took a
Yeah, but so
living
it's the same
organism
thing,
and
right?
rearranged the organs,
So
it
I mean,
won't.
it's the same thing in the sense that the universe is a composite of its constituent parts.
The universe is a composite of its constituent parts, yes.
Therefore, like you said it quite well, actually. You said that in order for something to be something, it has to have, what did you say? I can't remember the phraseology you used. It has to have the thing or something. You said something. What was it? You
It
said,
said it. I mean, I gave the example of its parts, and it depends on what you're talking about. I said I said a mountain. You can rearrange the rocks, and it's still a mountain.
yeah.
But with, say, a living
But the point
organism,
I'm
you can't
making is that,
rearrange the
look,
organs.
we said two things that we agreed upon, right, Hassan, if you remember. We said that if something is made up of parts, it's dependent upon those parts in order to exist in that. Yeah?
It's dependent upon its parts, yes.
Yeah.
In order to be
Which
how it
makes it
is now, yeah.
conceivable for us. If something is dependent upon its parts in order to exist, that's it. It's dependent upon its parts. Now, the parts can be taken out and can be put in. Those parts can be rearranged within it, like we said, right?
To an extent, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this disqualifies the universe from being a necessary existence for two main reasons. Reason number one is a necessary existence is something which cannot be conceived of in any other way. So, in other words, reassembly or rearrangement is impossible. And another reason is a necessary existence cannot depend upon its individual parts. Because if we can conceive it being inexistent without an integral part of it, then it's dependent in its composition and not independent. So, in other words, if I take a part of the universe out, let's say I take myself out of this universe, okay, or yourself, no
Yeah.
absurdity will amount. Okay, so if that's the case, the universe wouldn't collapse upon itself, it would continue. Therefore, taking parts out of the universe and putting them in doesn't result in the non-existence of the universe, and the universe can be rearranged in different ways. Therefore, it's not necessary, which means it cannot be independent. And if the universe is not independent, it has to be dependent.
Don't quite follow that logic. So sorry. If you have the universe and if you take something out of the universe, or if you rearrange the universe, it's still, it's still a
Okay,
universe.
let me just remind
in
you
a
of what
slightly
we
different
agreed
way.
upon. Let's just remind you of what we agreed upon. We said that anything that is made up of parts is dependent on those parts in order to exist in that composite form. Yeah. If you don't have those parts, the composite would not be as it is. So therefore, the continued existence of that composite requires those parts to exist in order to exist, and we agreed upon that, right? Just like you said, the mountain. We gave examples of everything else. This is a general principle. Anything that is made out of parts, physical parts, that can be taken out, rearranged, disassembled, so on. Anything that is made of such parts, okay, if it depends on those parts in order to exist. If those parts are not part of that thing, then it will not exist. If you take all the parts out, then it becomes zero. It becomes a non-existent entity.
Well, obviously, if you remove everything from the universe, then the universe is nothing.
No, I'm saying that I'm not saying the universe now. I'm just saying it as a metaphysical rule of thumb. If you have, to use your example, a mountain that's made up of rocks, and you remove every single rock away from the mountain, then
Yeah.
it no longer is a mountain.
Exactly. It's nothing. If you remove everything from the mountain, then you've got nothing left. Yeah.
So it depends on. So what it depends on? It depends on the rocks. The mountain depends on the rocks.
Yeah, the mountain depends on the rocks. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Now the universe is made up of physical parts, just like the mountain is made up of rocks.
Yes. Yeah.
So the universe, in order to be the universe, it depends upon the parts of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, to an extent. I mean, you could rearrange the parts and it still be the universe. But if you remove everything, then you're left with nothing.
Absolutely. So if you remove everything, you're left with nothing, which means it depends upon the constituent parts of it, right?
Yes, it depends on.
Yes.
It's composed of its
Fantastic.
parts.
So therefore, if the universe depends upon its parts, then the universe is dependent.
It's dependent upon its parts, yes, which is an internal
Yes.
thing. Whereas you're trying to
Yes.
imply that it's dependent on something external.
No, it's dependent upon its parts.
It's dependent upon its parts, which is an internal thing, yes.
Okay, it's dependent upon its parts, which is now the point is this: if it's dependent upon its parts in order to be, remember we said that anything which is made out of parts is generated and it's dependent.
No, you said generated. I didn't agree that. I said I didn't like the use of the term generated, but
Yeah. Okay, but if something is made up of parts, now think of it this way: either it pieced itself together, or something external to it pieced it together.
well, when you say something external or internal, it could be, it could be forces, it could be an unthinking agent. So in the same way that a rain cloud doesn't think to make rain, it just does it through natural processes.
Okay, no, but there's an assumption of naturalism there, right? So you're assuming naturalism when you're saying that there's no thinking there. I mean,
Because we don't have any
it's a
evidence of
category
any
mistake.
thinking agent creating anything. All we
Because
have
no,
are
what I mean is
examples
that
of natural forces.
this is a category mistake because you're confusing agency with mechanism, right? But what I'm saying is that now, if you're thinking about this, there's two possibilities. There's something that is made up of physical parts. Possibility A, that somehow the universe had its own agency and it pieced itself together conscientiously, knowing what it was doing, or B, that something external to it pieced it together? Which one of those two are more coherent to you?
I would say neither, because I didn't say anything about it creating itself conscientiously, and I didn't say anything about anything externally, because that's a false dichotomy. You've put two choices together and tried to make me choose between one, where it's quite possible the universe could have formed itself through unconscious processes.
Okay, no, but that's still. I didn't say it's. I didn't even use the word created. I actually said piece itself together.
Yeah,
So
you said
I mean,
consciously.
piecing itself together could be. It's neutral. It could actually be unconscious as well. Just like a cloud pieces itself together. I don't think there's any problem there.
Okay, I mean, it could have happened in the same way that an underwater volcano unconsciously creates an island. The universe could have unconsciously rearranged its matter and energy into the manner that we see it now, without any conscious thought.
All right. So you've got two possibilities, right? You have this universe which is dependent upon its pieces to piece itself together blindly, okay? Or you have an idea, or you have option B, which is that there's something external to it piecing it together, right? Now, I think this is quite exhaustive. I don't think there is a third option. I think either it's doing it to itself, or it's happening to itself, or it's doing it to itself, A, or B, something is doing it. It's either subject or object here. It can't be both at the same time, right?
It's either okay. I'll give that. It's either formed entirely internally, without an external agent, or there is an external agent acting on it.
And if it's being formed internally by itself, blindly, as you claim, yeah? When it's happening internally, would you say then, in your estimation, is the universe independent? Because if it's dependent upon its constituent parts and it's forming itself together and making itself, in a sense, then the universe requires no other, it's independent.
I would say it's entirely feasible, in fact, probable, that after the Big Bang, the universe continued along to where it is now through entirely internal processes without an external agent.
Yeah, so do you think it's independent?
I would say it's
self-sufficient in that sense.
Yes, of anything outside of the universe, yes.
So do you think it's self-sufficient?
Sorry, I wouldn't quite use the word self-sufficient, but say without an external agent is what I would say.
All right, without an external agent, but it's independent, and so in the sense it doesn't require anything else.
Yes. Okay. So we'll say that doesn't depend on anything else yet.
Okay. You see, this is fully in line with the dependency argument, because what you've just admitted is that there's something which is independent.
Well, we're not saying that the universe was independent when it was created, because we haven't agreed on that yet. All we've agreed
no, but what you've said is that the universe is independent, right?
All we've agreed on in the last 20 seconds of talking or so is that from the moment of the Big Bang up until how the universe is now, it was independent of any external agent.
All right. So do you believe? So you believe in an independent entity?
I do believe in independent entities. As a possibility, yes.
All right. So you believe the universe is an independent entity which requires nothing else in order to exist, and it itself is self-sufficient.
From the evidence we have, I see that the universe is an independent entity. I don't see any evidence of an external agent acting on it.
No worries, but you believe that the universe itself is independent.
From the limits of science that we have at the moment, yes, the universe is independent. Yes, without
all right. So if the universe is independent,
experiments. Sorry.
Right, fantastic. So the universe is independent. So which means that it's uncaused.
No, I didn't. I didn't agree with that. All I said was that all we know is from the Big Bang onwards, it's entirely possible something did create the universe at the Big Bang, but there's, as I've said multiple times, there's no evidence that whatever caused it, if it was caused, has interacted and maintained the universe. All the evidence I've seen is that from the Big Bang onwards, the universe has carried on its internal, internal processes.
All right. So Hassan, here's where we find a contradiction. Okay.
Sure.
Because if you have something which is independent and caused, that's a contradiction in terms. Because if causation, if something is independent, it has to be uncaused. If something is independent, by definition, that means that there's nothing that brought rise to his existence, and that it brought rise to its own existence, and it continues to bring rise. It continues to be self-sufficient for its own existence.
No, don't agree with that. Okay, let me give you an example. So if you imagine,
is this going to go much longer, Mohammed Hijab? Because we've got a few more.
No, let's just let him do this. Give it 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, can I just say, you say it's independent. Let's imagine that we've got those, those space rockets. So the space rockets is entirely dependent on, say, space agency. It fires it up, it goes into space. Once it's out into space, the space agency doesn't interact with it in any way. The space rockets go out into interstellar space. It does its own thing, measuring things. So yeah, that's caused, but once it's out there, beyond the realms of the space agency, it's independent and does its own thing.
No, I don't follow. What I'm saying is this: is that if something is independent, it's uncaused, and it has to be eternal as well. You know that?
No, I don't think. I don't agree, because I could.
Okay, well, how do you define independence?
Independence as in carrying on without any outside influence.
No. This is where this is where the contradictions are flaring up. Okay, because if something is independent, it means it's necessary. It means it cannot be any other way. Okay, that's the first thing. It cannot be any other way. And if it cannot be any other way, like 2 + 2 = 4. Look, 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary fact. Okay, it's a necessary fact. It can't be 2 + 2
fact, yeah.
But it's also a necessary fact because it can't be any other way, right?
Well, it's a mathematical fact, yeah. 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, but it's also a necessary fact.
I can do that with 4 pens sitting just here. I can show you.
All right, no problem. That's fine. But 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary fact. It cannot be any other way, and it's eternally like that. So in any time or place, 2 + 2. Pardon?
That's mathematics.
Yeah. So it's a necessary fact, which is eternally like that. It's 2 + 2 = 4. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Okay, it's always going to be like that. Time does not influence this point. Right. So something which is necessary and independent has to be eternally so. If something is necessary, it has to be independent because it means that it requires nothing in order to exist. You just said it yourself, the universe doesn't require anything outside of itself in order to continue existing. But then if that's the case, why would it require something in order to exist at any point? You see, if you're saying that there was a cut-off period, if you like, where this universe was at one point dependent and then became independent, then how can you explain that? Because you're saying that right now the universe is independent because it's only dependent upon its own parts in order to exist. But you're saying, but this thing which only depends upon its own parts in order to exist, at one point required something else in order to exist. So how does that? How does this fit in with necessity? Because necessity is something which couldn't be any other way. And if it couldn't be any other way, it couldn't be any other way yesterday, today, or tomorrow, just like 2 + 2 = 4. And if that is the case, it has to be independent yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It has to be eternally independent. You cannot pick and choose a time where you decide for it to be dependent and pick and choose a time where you decide for it to be independent. And by the way, you're doing so arbitrarily. You have no measure of doing.
Example of the space rocket. So the space rocket is dependent upon the space agency till it comes up. Then while it's independent of itself while it's out, out into space, and eventually it will degrade and fall apart. So, no,
Yeah, the space rocket is always dependent. There's never a point where it's independent. Because we've said already, it's made up of limited number of matter, and it's the same. Go back to the tree example. You see, the point I'm saying to you is this. I'm saying to you is, Ihsan, what I'm saying to you is you cannot arbitrarily decide that at this point, juncture A, okay, where the universe requires an external cause, the external cause somehow disappears. Okay, I don't know what happens to the external cause. It's no longer connected to the universe.
Just kick-started the universe and then leave the universe on its own to carry on.
And on that point, we've gone full circle. Right.
Yeah, the problem with that is that you're saying that, so at one point the universe decided, or sorry, that this thing decided that the universe was going to be independent. So it had to be. So there was what you're saying is that there's a point where the universe was independent. Sorry, the universe was dependent, and then it became independent. But if something is independent, it has to be unnecessary. It cannot be any other way. That's the definition of necessity, right? So if it cannot be any other way, it cannot be any other way at any time.
Yeah.
So if it cannot be any other way, it cannot be any other way at any time. And if it cannot be any other way at any time, then it's either going to eternally be dependent or eternally independent. And if it's necessary, it has to be eternally independent. It cannot be connected to anything independent. So the universe, by this standard, you're basically, unfortunately, it's a contradiction, because you're saying at one point it was dependent, but then it became independent. And the issue is with necessity is that it always has to be the same thing, like 2 + 2 = 4. So if it's necessary and independent, and it's also eternal, then it can't be necessary, independent, and eternal on Tuesday, and on Monday it was actually dependent. That makes no, there's no logical sense there. So if you want to have causation, you can't have causation without dependency, in a sense. An uncaused thing has to always be independent, whereas a caused thing has to always be dependent. Like, for example, yourself, right? You're a caused thing.
Why does a caused thing always have to be dependent?
Because if a caused, as I said to you before, a caused thing, like yourself, your parents gave birth to you, right? Oh, your mom gave birth to you.
Yeah.
It's late at night, yeah. Your mom gave birth to you, yeah.
Yeah.
Your parents gave birth. Your mom gave birth to you, innit? So
yeah, sure.
What I was going to say was that your mom gave birth to you. So obviously you needed your mum to give birth to you. So you're dependent upon your mum.
I'm not dependent on my parents anymore.
Pardon?
I'm not dependent on my parents anymore.
No, but I'm saying at one point you were.
At one point I was, yeah, but I'm not dependent on my
parents. So that's it. You're contingent. You're always going to be contingent, because a necessary fact is something, right, that cannot be any other way.
I was dependent on my parents, yes, but not anymore. So if anything, you've actually made.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying,
can be dependent on something.
On the one hand, look, the definition of a contingent thing is something which is dependent, and something which can be another way, right? But a necessary thing is something which is independent and it cannot be any other way. And what I'm saying is that if you at one point, if in your life there was ever a time where you were dependent, that nullifies your necessity. There's no way you can be described as being independent necessary, because remember, and eternal, because if we're saying you're necessary, you have to be always necessary. You have to be always independent, because there can never be a conceivable time or place where you can be any other way. But if at one point you are dependent, that's it. It nullifies your necessity for good. It's like a disqualifier.
Yeah, so my whole life, yes, is dependent upon me being dependent on my parents at the beginning, yes.
Yeah. So if you are dependent if there's ever an entity that's ever dependent, then it can never be necessary. And if it can never be necessary, it can never be independent. Which proves, once again, argumentum ad absurdum, that the universe cannot be independent. Because if
Okay,
if it
I
ever,
mean, you've changed
pardon?
definitions there, but we agreed that I know I said that from the Big Bang onwards, it's perfectly possible for the universe to be completely independent. But now you want to say the universe in its entirety from its entire existence. Then you could, and I said it's possible that whatever created the universe,
What I said was the
was
universe is, if
necessary
you
to
want to
create
define
it,
necessity as
but that
something
doesn't
that cannot be any
necessarily
other way.
imply that whatever created the universe is still there.
No, but
In
do
the
you
same
agree
way
with me
that
that
I carry on
necessity is
living
something that cannot
after
be
my
any other
parents
way?
pass away.
Do you agree that necessity is something that cannot be any other way?
Necessity is something cannot be any other way. Sorry, can you
So you say it's
expand
necessarily
on
so,
that?
which means it has to be that way.
I mean, if something has to be one way, then it could exist in other ways, but not. But it would be something different. So
What?
I'm a collection of atoms. If you rearrange my atoms, me personally would cease to exist, but those atoms would still continue to exist.
No, I'm saying that 2 + 2 = 4. That's a necessary fact. So that can't be
It's a
any other way. It has
demonstrable
to be like that.
mathematics fact, yeah.
Yeah, they look in philosophy. They call this necessary fact. These are necessary facts. Yeah.
Okay, I
So
mean, 2 + 2
in
= 4 is
philosophy, they call
demonstrable.
this a
Yeah.
necessary thing. A necessary thing
But
is
Charles, could you
something
just
which cannot be any other
list
way.
could you just list the different types of existence? So that I think that
Right.
might
So
help
just
to get the point
to
across.
say this one more time. An impossible thing is something like a squared circle, right? It's an impossible existence. It cannot be any. It cannot
Yeah.
exist in the real world. All right. A possible thing is something which depends upon something else, and number two is dependent upon something else in order to exist. Whereas the necessary thing is something which cannot be any other way, and it depends upon nothing, and it's always at its state. So in other words, it can never be anything other than what it is. That's what that means. Okay, so when we're saying necessary, it's in contradistinction to the word possible or contingent. Okay.
Okay.
So what I'm
All right,
saying is, if the universe is necessary and independent, if that's because you can't be necessary and possible at the same time. That's impossible. That's like a squared circle. You can't. You see, you have three categories. They're separate categories. You can't have something which is an impossible possible existence. That's the squared circle scenario. Yeah. You can't have something which is a necessary possible existence. That's a squared circle scenario. You can't have something which is independent but caused. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Because if it was caused, it was brought into existence by something else. But if it's independent, it requires nothing else to bring it into existence or to keep it in existence. So definitionally, they're two opposite things.
If you're describing
with me
something
here?
in the entirety of its existence rather than at a particular set of time, then if we're agreeing that the universe had a cause, then we'll say yes, it's a necessary thing, is it's dependent upon its cause for its creation.
So you're saying the universe is a necessary thing?
I'm saying is, if the universe had a creator, if it had a first cause, then I'm following your logic and saying then I would agree that it's that it's dependent upon its first cause, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has to be. It can't be dependent. It cannot be dependent and uncaused at the same time. It can't be independent and caused. So you can't have this and that. It's like a squared circle. If you're saying that if it's independent,
it's ongoing.
Right? No, I understand. But at any point, here's the point. At any point, if you say that the universe was at any point dependent, that disqualifies it from necessity. Because necessity entails that something is always the way it is and never changes.
No, I didn't
Basically,
say
it's incorrigible. It's called immutable. It's incorrigible. It doesn't ever change. 2 + 2 = 4. It stays rock solid the way it is, and it will always be.
No,
right?
I mean, the universe can carry on changing, yeah.
Pardon?
I mean, the universe can carry on changing, yes.
Could I just
yeah?
Step in for
so it can't be. If the universe can carry on changing, it can't be necessary. And if it depends upon something else or ever did, it can't be necessary. which means it can never be. It's a disqualifier from necessity, and it's a disqualifier from independence. So therefore, from your understanding now, you can't say the universe was eternally independent.
Yeah, well,
and you can't say it's ever independent or ever necessary.
Yeah, but I was
therefore the universe is dependent.
I was talking about the time after the Big Bang, and now you're talking about the universe in the entirety of its lifetime. Which, if we
now, what I'm saying is, if you want to say that the universe was at any point dependent, then that disqualifies it from being independent. It disqualifies it.
Yeah, no, I understand. But now because before we were talking about the ongoing universe, but now you've changed it to the universe in the entirety of its life.
No. So what I'm saying, the reason why this is relevant, right? The reason why this is relevant is because what I'm saying to you is that if we can prove at any point that the universe was dependent at any point and continues being dependent at any point, if that is if we can prove any of that, then the universe is disqualified from being independent, necessary, or eternal. Or necessarily eternal, I should say. It's completely disqualified from that. No, and if it's completely disqualified from that,
I don't agree that it disqualifies the universe from being eternal, because whatever could have caused it could have been dependent upon its cause.
No, I didn't say eternal. I said necessarily eternal.
So it's dependent upon its cause for its entirety of its life cycle.
No, I agree. It's not. I didn't say eternal. I said necessarily eternal. So it's, in other words, its properties are not necessary. Okay, and it's not the case eternally. In this way, what we can say is this. What we can say is that the universe, if at any point of its existence, can be proven to be caused, then it's in need of the thing which instantiated or put it into existence, causes preponderance. If that's the case, then the case is practically closed. There's no way thereafter you can say that the universe is independent. It's impossible, because how could it be independent where at one point of its life it required, if you call it a life, just using that language, it required some other thing external to it. There's no way it's independent. It's no way it's necessary. It's impossible. It becomes a full-on contradiction, a glaring contradiction.
As I've said 100 times.
Just let Imran clarify, because
I think. Could I just very briefly? So I think actually you guys aren't disagreeing. You both agree that the universe is something that is not independent. And I think the question still remains for you. I think the question still remains for you, Hassan, is that this original thing, whatever that foundational thing was, why could it have not ceased to then exist after making the initial whatever causes? The thing that Brother Muhammad Jabbar is explaining is that the different types of existence, and these are sort of philosophical terms, and they come with specific definitions. And a necessary thing, when we agree that there is a necessary foundational independent or incontingent thing that everything else is dependent upon, that whatever that necessary agent is or necessary thing is, that one of the qualities of having that, even the title is "This is necessary," is that it's an unchanging, immutable, incorrigible thing, i.e. that it is as it is and it cannot be in any other way at any point in any form of time you want to think about. And so what that would mean, even if, sure, I understand, but this is actually a definitional thing within the discussion that's, predates Islam. These things have been around for essentially a couple of thousand years. But that point really is the point that this once a thing is necessary, i.e. that it has to be this way, then it can't suddenly then disappear once it causes an effect or once it brings about an incontingent thing. That would be an ad hoc assertion, and it wouldn't be coherent with the argument. If that's right, Mohammed, am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all arbitrary. It's basically that would be you making an assumption, right? And it's basically an unsubstantiated one. It's saying that there was a time where the universe became independent, as if it's cocooning into this independent state, right? This requires evidence. This is you that requires you. Well, you're saying there's no evidence. Where's the evidence for that?
I'm not saying it's definitely the case. I'm saying it's a possibility in the same way.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, I
possibility
understand
that
you're saying that, but
whatever
I'm saying it's
created
not
it
a
is carrying on
possibility.
to exist. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I know for certain either way.
I think we
Yeah,
established
it's
that
not possible.
an hour ago.
Yeah. And I need to get to work tomorrow, so I'm gonna have to get to sleep.
Isan, you've been very, very, very polite, very courteous. Thanks for coming
Brother,
on,
come back to the truth. Were you a Muslim before?
Yeah.
Yeah, thought so. We'll ask
You're
you
gonna
next
have
time
to
how
come
you
back.
left Islam.
I
another
come
really
back to the
enjoyed
haqq.
talking with you three.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Come
But
back,
this is a
man. We need
beautiful
you back in the
example.
Muslim community. You're a clever man.
Yeah, but this is a
There's
beautiful
going to be a
example.
lot of Muslim women that are going to need a bit of ihsan in their lives.
But just let me just say something to atheists who are watching this. This is a beautiful example. This is how you come on, make your point. You don't need to come on ad hominem, attacking, trying to defend the last person. Just come on, make your point, try and support your point. And that's that. And
Okay.
pleasantry. See, Isan will leave
Best
this
wishes,
thing.
everyone.
We were courteous.
Bye-bye.
Great minute tomorrow. So
Yeah.
See, all the ladies are now gonna swarm in and send us messages now. Say, hopefully bring him to Islam. This guy, we need him. Very scientific, very good looking, very eloquent.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
take all of it.
Right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to bring the Muslims on quickly. There's about 6 of them. Yeah, just let us
bro.
point. I know we've been on a while. Just give them a minute or something. All right. Ready?
No.
No massive discussions. No analysis of the debate, please. Just nice question, comment, something like that. Ready? Here goes the first one. Assalamu alaikum, Omar.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
I have a quick come on Ihsan's argument. Basically, he was saying what he was saying is that if the cause is not dependent, is not continuously dependent, or sorry, the effect is not continuously dependent on its cause, then the cause is necessary or has necessarily ceased to exist. But this is not necessary. There's no implication. You understand what my argument? I think this was his problem. This is why you were running in circles, because to him, if his very existence, his beginning to exist, depends on the cause, then once the cause does its job, it has to cease to exist. It doesn't have to keep existence. But that's not necessary. That does not logically follow. And I think that this was the core problem of his argument. Now, a quick question to Hijab.
Go on.
A quick question to Hijab. When you finish the contingency argument, what are the consequences? Because you mentioned earlier about the attributes of God that can be logically deduced from, whether it's the causality argument or the contingency argument. What are those attributes, for example?
So necessity, eternality, the stuff that was independence and oneness. I think that these things are clear. And then obviously you can extrapolate also omnipotence. And then you require additional arguments for things like intelligence. So like if you bring in not say a fine-tuning argument, but you can even bring like the uniformity of nature, an argument with reference to that. You can bring intelligence into the equation as well.
Do you think that omniscience is one of those attributes?
Yeah, I mean, you can make it. You can make that the case. Like I said, it's intelligence in that is you can make the case, because especially it will have to be a probabilistic case, but for sure you can. I believe so. Yeah.
Because I think it's problematic.
All knowing the future. The first cause would have to know the future. Would you make that case?
I think it's problematic. I think if you claim that you can deduce omniscience, it's going to be problematic, because it's going to cancel free will. And I think as Muslims, or the majority of Muslims, there are schools of thought that believe in there are hard determinists, but the majority of Muslims believe in free will. What we believe in is that we have free will and God is omniscient, but how do we reconcile the two? Well, God knows best. But I think if you claim that you can logically deduce omniscience, but then you'll have a logical contradiction with with free will, basically. So I don't believe that you can logically deduce omniscience.
Are you talking about the free will of God or the free will of human beings?
The free will of human beings.
How
Why
does
is there
God
a
knowing your
contradiction?
action affect your free will?
Well, if God knows it before, then am I really free to do it?
Well, you've done it.
Well, you can say that whether God knows it or not, it's
But
irrelevant.
I think that these are. I think that's like really a non sequitur. I don't think that
I don't
that
get it.
has
Yeah,
anything
I
to
don't
do
get
with
that.
that.
The idea, because the Allah knows your action, that He caused that action. I don't understand. I don't understand how you marry that up.
Yeah,
Well, it's
Anyway.
you know, the Quran doesn't say Allah caused your action. He says, "Wallahu khalaqakum wa ma ta'malun." He created your action. There's a difference here. Allah doesn't say he caused it, which is it's an interesting and important nuance. Like the Quran doesn't say Allah caused your actions.
It's also
says
kind of
that
off topic.
no,
He created them.
our actions predetermined.
There's another story. It's another
But
conversation.
now that's a different discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. Thanks a lot, Omar. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Excellent.
All right. When I said like keep it kind of short, can you guys keep it kind of short? Appreciate it. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Hi there, assalamu alaikum, guys.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll go very fast, very quick. Can you guys elaborate a bit on the notion of infinity? Because I find it always a very confusing notion. With regard to the universe itself, we often say that the universe is infinite itself, but it's made of parts, and therefore I assume that it's actually a finite phenomena that just keeps on growing. If it keeps on growing, it means that we can add to it, and if we can add to it, it means that it's not infinite by nature. And therefore, and the question I derive from this is, if the universe is finite, does that actually confirm the existence of God, or does it go against it? Or is it completely, let's say, a mute point?
Yeah, I'd go with your moot point.
Because
the point is anything that's got limited variables, anything that's got limited variables is going to be dependent, right? And it's going to be dependent on something which is either dependent or independent. And you can't have an infinite regress with dependent things. Therefore, we say that it's dependent ultimately on an independent thing. So the main point to note is that if anything has limited variables, if anything is made up of limited matter or energy, whatever it may be, atoms or carbon, whatever it may be, then it can't be the explanation for its own existence. And if it's not the explanation for its own existence, it requires something outside of it to be the explanation.
Yeah. I think he's asking about infinity in size. You know that. I think.
Yeah, I mean the infinity as in the quantitative notion, because from what I understand, the universe is made of parts again, so it's a quantitative element, anyways. But, when we speak about God, then it's the notion that God is infinite. It's infinite, but I don't think it's meant in the quantitative sense, as in it's a number, even the largest number could be attributed to it. So it couldn't be split in parts.
Yeah, we don't say the universe is infinite.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is, how do we reconcile? Okay, so let me phrase this in a different manner. For example, we say in Islam that God kind of descended a part of His mercy on earth, right? Something in that sense. And so, in that manner, there is the idea that God's mercy is something that can be split in pieces, like it's kind of like there is a small part and a big part.
Yeah, but most people that do sharh of that hadith is they're saying it's majaz. It's not like actual parts, physical parts that you can split like that. It's more it's a metaphoric notion.
Okay, so there is no notion at all that the let's say the attribute of God would be could be cut in parts, or that could be finite in a sense.
There is a hadith to that effect, but the understanding of it is not that God's mercy is divisible and is limited. That's not the understanding. That is if you all the hadiths with numbers, you can see that the Arabs used to speak in a certain way, and that was.
So it's metaphorical, basically. It's more of a
it's not
metaphorical element.
God's mercy can actually be divided and like split and stuff like that.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot for that.
You got to be quicker than this, guys, because it's getting late, man. Just quickly, go on, Benny. What's your question?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, it's a long session, bro. It's a record, so I'm not gonna bother too much. But the show is about atheism, you know, and you can see clearly that the atheists are hiding behind the I don't knows, because they are, and the reason why they're hiding behind the I don't knows and the arguments against God and everything is because they have a false hope and a sense of security, and that's the real reason why they easily can say I don't know, and make arguments against God, like God is something to argue against, because they are at home, they have a cup of coffee, they're relaxing, they're feeling safe. So they are in a state of safety. That's the delusion that they have. So that's why they always argue, because they have a sense of safety. And then when they are in a plane or in a ship, then the sense of safety, the delusion is gone from them. And then the real feature comes out. And that's the thing with atheists. Most of the atheists are just hiding behind this false sense of security. And that's why Allah says, do you really feel safe that the punishment doesn't come you directly? Do you really feel safe? And that's the real, one of the biggest problems for atheists, because they sin, and when they sin or going against God, nothing happens. So when nothing happens, then the delusion will grow, and the delusion will grow, and they will think to themselves, hey, nothing happens.
You're rambling. Jazakallah khair. It was a question you're supposed to ask. Anyway,
yeah, the question is if...
no question, no time now. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Next time.
Okay.
Brothers, take the time to ask your question. You're not going to be able to ramble and then ask a question, okay, guys? All right, here we go. Assalamu
alaikum. How are you guys? Okay, quick question. First point, Ahsan is called 1C, Ahsan 1C, so he's Ahsan first cause. I don't know why he had so much trouble understanding that. That's a funny just note on the side. The second thing I just want to ask about, like, I take to the point, or adhere to the point that rationality plus empiricism plus intuition equals, plus cohesion equals true knowledge. So is the kalam or the contingency arguments actually enough? As we've seen with many atheists, they don't latch on to logic that much when it comes to the critical thought end of it. So they latch on emotions, biases, all of these stuff. So is there an argument actually that's more like cohesive and more enveloping of empiricism, intuition, everything else, instead of the kalam or the contingency argument?
Ibrahim, sorry, just a quick one, layman's response.
Okay.
Don't worry about what they believe or whether they accept it to be true. Yeah, that's not what your point. Okay. The point you're establishing is your position is reasonable, logical, and rational. That's what you're doing. And just as Ihsan admitted that the position to believe in a first cause of everything that exists is a rational belief. That's it. Don't worry about them. They're going to believe all sorts of stuff, vegetarian eagles and everything. Do you get me?
Yeah.
You're not
okay,
like,
I was just saying that.
See, the reasonable ones will listen to what you're saying. The ones who
with the smallest evidence, yeah,
they're going to come up with all sorts of crazy skeptics things, and don't worry about them. All you need to do is establish your position, and that's it, and work from that base, inshallah.
We can ask a second question very quickly. Second question, yeah. So if actually, like, can we go with the other way around? Should we show them the evidence for Islam rather than just explain, like, with arguments and stuff like that? Should we actually put the horse in front of the carriage and just explain them what Islam is from the beginning, from the get-go, instead of getting into the argumentation debate type of thing? Is that better?
It depends who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a skeptical atheist, as soon as you start talking about religion, they're going to start talking about sky wizards. They're not going to get the concept of miracles. They're not going to get it. So first you have to establish a creator first. Without the creator, they ain't going to accept nothing. They're going to start asking about winged horses and stuff. Pointless.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of evidence in Islam. I mean, in Islam itself. Yeah.
But if they're reasonable, you can demonstrate why you believe Islam is true, why you believe Muhammad ﷺ was who he claimed to be. You can show the guidance within Islam, how it benefits 21st century man like nothing else. That's a different flex.
Yeah.
But you don't use Islam to prove to an atheist who's trying to refute the existence of God. Because I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
Because they'll start talking about Indian gods and Zeus and Thor and all that nonsense. Do you guys agree, Imran?
Yeah. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. All right, Ibrahim. Jazakallah khair for joining
Thank you
us.
so much.
We're nearly done, guys. Shahid, assalamu alaikum. Quick one.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Salam.
Okay. Brothers, quick question, yeah? I've been waiting for a while. Okay, so very quickly, can you tell me why the independent necessary existence can't be some type of eternal universe-making machine? Why specifically? Because I've been trying to like play devil's advocate and trying to think like what's the reason why it can't be an eternal universe very clearly and without like just simplify it. Does that make sense? Because sometimes it gets lost in translation. I've also read your book as well, and I've read it like I read the paragraph where you explain it a few times, and I'm thinking about it. I'm just trying to grapple with some of the ideas, but so yeah.
Yeah. So a machine is something which is made up of many parts.
Yeah.
And the problem is that anything that's made of parts is generated.
Yeah, I just use the term machine just to kind of any eternal universe, a universe that basically, can you have an eternal universe that is independent and necessary? Well, obviously, I don't believe it, but what I mean is,
I understand what you're saying, but so
yeah,
I think this is what you call a matter of semantics. So you can call the independent necessary being a universe if you like, but it doesn't change it from being an independent necessary being. You get what I'm trying to say?
No,
now
exactly.
It's just adding different labels to it. You can call it for the sake of argument, you can call it a universe, but if it's independent and necessary and one, and everything depends upon it and it depends upon nothing, for
then
all intents and purposes, we're talking about God, right? So if you want to call it a universe, you want to call it a machine, you can call it whatever you want, but we're talking about the same things, which in Surah Al-Ikhlas, is the base definition of what God is for us.
Yes. So then I was thinking at that point, then can you kind of juxtapose this or then bring them back to the reality that we live in, like in regards to laws, mathematics, consciousness, everything that we see around us, and then hone in on these things in order to prove that it is actually a God or God, the God.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, we've already defined, God's attributes and stuff. Yeah. But then at that point now, we're going to have to start introducing what you call teleology, like purpose. Yeah, teleos. Now, what's the purpose of life? Why would God do this? Now, that's where you start provoking them with questions like that.
Yeah,
and then you can start introducing them to the messengers, and then introducing them to the final messenger, and to the evidences and all that stuff. That's a completely different argument, which requires a different discussion.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, jazakallah khair, barakallahu feek. Okay, boys.
Okay, Shahid, thanks for your question, man. And he's been here from the right beginning, just before an atheist, actually, that guy. 5 hours he's been waiting. That's that. All right, guys. That's it. What a stream. Alhamdulillah. We 5 hours and 14 minutes. Good job we started at 7 o'clock.
My God.
Jazakallah khair, I really appreciate everything. We've learned a lot today.
I learned a lot as well, especially in terms. I like the way you keep things on track. That's one of your real, qualities.
I like to think so. I like to hold them like this, and you're going nowhere.
Yeah, you think, okay, these are parameters. Yeah, that's good. And to the doctor as well. Thank you so much for your input, and it's good to have someone who's a medic, someone who's got a scientific background in the group, because it makes us feel like whenever I'm saying something about physics or biology, I'm just looking at your face and seeing if he's nodding, and it's okay.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm trying to talk about philosophy. I'm looking at you. They have to say something.
I'm thinking, yeah. Hopefully, I'm saying it right.
All right, guys. Just want to thank everyone for watching. On Friday, we've got Sabul back on. We're going to do the other angle then. So we're going to go with, again, we made a mistake last time bringing the atheist on quickly. And what we're going to do this time, we're going to establish this science and this idea, because a lot of terms came out that I think need being delved into. like this idea of, was it philosophical naturalism and methodological naturalism and instrumentalism and all these kind of terms. We need to understand it, because I never, I did used to think atheists were kind of monolithic, but they're not. They're not in a vacuum. It's based upon principles, and their principles in different directions, and there's scholars that support them in them principles. And if you don't know that, the atheist will switch between them, to answer points where if you know your stuff, you go, wait a minute, you just said you were methodological naturalism. Now you went to philosophy. So I think these need to learn.
Absolutely. And I think your style is, I think, even put the labels aside, I think how, that whole cutthroat style, go in and, you've just said this guy and you just said this. It's identifying contradictions, and when someone's speaking straight and when someone's just trying to play games. That's what it boils down to.
Alhamdulillah.
That's why I was a bit brutal with my kicking out earlier. My wife was messaging me saying, stop kicking people out. I said, have you heard them?
Do you know what it's like? It's like the Royal Rumble and Stone Cold's in the middle, throwing everyone out.
A guy comes on and tries to challenge you on something you said on a different stream on a different topic, and he wouldn't go away.
I don't know, man. Some people are just looking for fame, man. But whatever.
Well, alhamdulillah.
I got Stone Cold. You should have that as your. You should have that as your entrance, like broken glass. There's gonna be an editor there, a producer that's gonna produce a compilation with you of with some broken glass at the back.
Why I miss Speaker's Corner, you know that. But there's so much waffle that goes on where you can just condense it and just say, "What's your point?" You say, "What's your point?" to somebody, they're stuck. They come with a massive spiel, massive flex. Okay, what's your point? And they're like, doesn't that mean? What do you mean? Doesn't it mean? You've come with the claim, man. What's it all about?
It's true. What I mean? These are shrewd points. It's the shrewd movements. What's your point? Yeah, I like that.
That's it. That. Because you can come with all this kind of spiel, but what's the ramification of that spiel? What does it mean?
Yeah.
And the reality is they don't even know themselves. They took it from somewhere. They come with it. I keep hearing about this. I know it's a complete change of subject. There's holes in the narrative that Yasser Qadi said, in that discussion with you. All I ever hear from Christians is there's holes in the narrative. There's holes in the narrative. I don't know. Do you even know what you're on about? Do you even know what it means in the narrative? I've never heard a Christian yet explain what it means. They just keep saying it as if they know what it means, but they don't.
I mean, just it's just what it is. It's just like catchphrases make themselves feel good.
Yeah, just cliches. That's it. Right, I'm going to send on the lion. Thanks for joining. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.